What's going on, Dragons? Happy Friday. As always, I'm your co-host, Corey, and welcome to episode 44 of the ERCast, our weekly conversation about all things Magic the Gathering. With me today in the Dragon's Den, as always, is our good buddy and other co-host, Cole.
How's it going, everybody?
It's going
Great,
good.
great
It's going
answer.
good. He announces his presence to resounding applause.
Well, I'm assuming that they use our podcast as an opportunity to talk with us. Like maybe this episode, let's talk to the listener a little bit. How are you doing? I wasn't talking to you, Corey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this week, you guys, we're going to be discussing the new Foundations and Foundations Jumpstart sets. So that's the kind of the meat of today's episode. Before we get into that, however, we always like to start off with how has this week in Magic been treating you, Cole? So what do you got for us? Had any exciting games? Anything exciting going on outside the world of Magic you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I've had some solid games, nothing too memorable. Some salty games, some regular games, all sorts of good stuff. Right now, I'm making some changes to my Scarab God deck, and so I have a couple of cards that I'm like really just scrambling over, trying to figure out how to swap these. But outside of that, I mean, life is exciting, man. I'm preparing stuff for the wedding. We got a hurricane coming next week. So it's been a busy month. What about you, Corey? How's Magic been treating you?
Magic has been good. So I recently, in probably the last week or two, started getting that deck building itch. You know when you haven't built one in a while, and you're like, I
Oh,
need
I
to
know the
build something.
feeling. I
Yeah.
know the feeling.
But my biggest thing, I guess my biggest hurdle is I've never been great about building decks for myself. I tend to build decks for my wife or other people.
Sure.
So I have just about gotten halfway into building a Emodane the Pyrohammer deck for Sharon. So I already have it built. It's built on Moxfield, but as far as assembling the cards, I'm about halfway into it.
So Sharon, did Sharon have the burn for the burn? Is she interested in the pyroclasm, or is this
Um,
your nasty doing?
so that's sort of an interesting journey. So she has never been a deck builder, but she's sort of like an aspiring deck builder. She always says, I would like to build a deck just to kind of get the first deck jitters out of the way. But she's never actually sat down and built the deck. So we were sitting on Moxfield and we
Uh huh.
made a kind of faux list of any kind of basic commander that would be a good first build for a first time deck crafter. And we kind of went through a couple different ones, like all right, mono green landfall, mono blue draws, stuff like that. Just things that would be not necessarily simple to build, but kind of put you on rails to build so it wasn't as complex where she didn't feel as overwhelmed. And this was one of the ones that was on that build list. And then she just kind of went, all right, well, hey, go ahead and build me a deck. And then politely opted herself out of building.
Well, why she gave you the ideas. So she's basically building the deck through you. You're an extension of her.
Yeah, she vicariously backdoor recruited me into building her a deck is what happened. She incepted me into building her a deck.
Oh well, I'm sure I'm sure you get the chance to play her decks every once in a while. So this inception might be a little bit spoiled by your own desires. I have a hinkering of an idea.
Yeah, it's not a deck I was upset about building. It's definitely one that has crossed my mind before as something I'd want to build. So, yeah, I'm about 60-ish cards into compiling it. Most of the stuff I have, it's just a matter of which stack on my desk does this particular card sit in.
Is sifting through 25 different stacks of 600
Yes.
cards, many of them draft chaff from the lost caverns of Ixalan.
Yeah, it's essentially like sifting through the sands in Giza to find the last treasure of the pharaohs amongst the pyramids. It's kind of like that, except one good sneeze and my whole palace of cards could come toppling down.
Well, not to compare a an Embercleave to the Great Pyramids of Giza, but
Sure. Well, I mean, one and the same, really. Listen, you can't debate that these are apple to apple comparisons because Magic has Cleopatra and ancient Egypt also has Cleopatra.
it's lore. It's embedded in permanent Magic lore now
They're now they're now intrinsically linked together.
by the power of Ra.
Yeah, so that's how my week in Magic has been going, and other than that, it has pretty much been, I think, the same as you, just minus the wedding prep. So I locked in to see what this hurricane does, if anything, and that good old work, that good old four-letter word that starts with a W that I'm destined to do, I guess.
Until the day we all die.
Yeah, pretty much. But hey, let's talk foundations. So Magic's newest set came out. Actually, as we're recording it, it comes out tomorrow.
Officially.
Officially, won't be tomorrow when you're listening to this, obviously, but officially tomorrow we have Foundations, and separately we have Foundations Jumpstart, which is the same and also different product.
Yeah, it's so Foundations. We have to set the scene. Foundations is a pretty unique set because it's kind of setting the core foundations, if you will, of the standard rotation for the next several years. So this will kind of be like a core set. It'll be legal until 2029, and that means we're going to see these cards a lot for the next 5 years.
You know what's curious to me? So you know how other sets have been legal, obviously for some duration in standard.
Yeah,
Like Bloomburrow is going to be legal for, I don't know, the next 2-3 years in standard or whatever rotation looks like now.
sure.
So, but the concept of foundations being that it is literally the foundation of their standard rotation for the next 5-7 years. So, is foundations going to be continually in print until 2029?
Yeah, it'll be continuously in print, and then they will add, add additional cards. It won't only be foundations, but and I'm sure as we get closer to the end of this term, we'll see, foundations 2, or like the foundations, the sequel, where they're melding different, success. Well, what was successful about Foundations 1? What can we bring into the next scene, and how can we make the gameplay unique? Because obviously, if we're going to be seeing these cards for quite a long time, people are going to get used to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing is that what this comes back to or harkens back to is the old core sets, where every year you would have core set 2021, I think was the last one, but every year they would have a core set like compilation of cards.
Right.
I guess where I would say the big difference on this one is though is usually the core set was like a compilation of cards from within the year, more or less. Like you would see some staples that weren't, let's say, printed in 2020 that were in core set 2020, but a bulk of the stuff was, found within that year. Foundations is more of like a cross generational version of a core set.
Well, and it's bringing back the core set because I think it finished. They stopped doing that several years
Mhm.
ago, but it's and they stopped it several years prior in 2015 as well. So maybe this will be a pattern. Maybe 2029 might come a little bit sooner than we think, but who's to
Yeah, I mean,
say?
I wouldn't be surprised if even if they say Foundations is good until 2029, if you don't see like Foundations 2027, where maybe it's like a revamped version, and they go, "Hey, here's stuff that was printed in the last couple years that we think should stay evergreen in the format."
Yeah, and I mean, looking through the cards as well, it's a pretty varied group of cards. You got something for everybody here. There's a couple pretty interesting inclusions, and I think the main thing to focus on as well is that this isn't a commander centric set. Like a lot of players have complained that sets that are supposed to be focused on standard, or like for instance Modern Horizons, panders, focusing on modern, panders to a lot of commander players with their releases, and that this set is going to be balanced around standard. It's not going to have those, wow, this is a instant commander staple cards, and
Mhm.
that's probably a good thing for those who aren't infected with the commander bug.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that stands out immediately is that this is the last set since what Ravnica remastered that hasn't come with like 4 commander decks stapled to it. Because even the Modern Horizons 3 one came with commander decks.
Oh, and there was a little bit of outrage about that
Mhm.
happening. It was, why, and I think there was also discourse online with Foundations that when they were discussing it before, the set was being revealed, that if they attempted to release commander decks with this, that it would be a real nail in the coffin of the idea that every set is just pandering to EDH, or has that sort of, well, this is what it'll sell the set if we have these chase cards that, standard players
Well,
don't care about. But
and you know what's gonna be real weird then is when I followed this up with this little factoid that between Foundations and Jumpstart, there's 37 new commanders, which is pretty on par, if not higher, than a lot of the sets that have been coming out this year.
well, what if you compare it to other Jumpstart sets? Because like Jumpstart in particular has, a fair amount of legendary creatures in it. But the actual foundation set, like I don't think Jumpstart's not standard legal. This is more of a
True. So
secondary
Jumpstart,
gameplay.
yeah, Jumpstart's not standard legal. And I will say I don't have the numbers in front of me to tell you like this Jumpstart versus last year's, which one had more commanders or more legendary creatures in it. I can tell you there's 37 total between Foundations and Jumpstart. There's 27 of which are in Jumpstart, so 10 of which are in Foundations proper. And by commanders, these are like new, not reprints, nothing like that. These are like wholly new commanders.
Okay.
And
Yeah. So I mean, which if you're saying it's 10 in the main set, that's pretty on par with our expectations of it not being a commander set.
sure, yeah, I mean, it's pretty on par with it not being commander set. I guess my concern, or I wouldn't even say concern, I guess my question would be this, right? So Foundations also is kind of selling itself or setting itself up as like this is a good starting point for a beginner player because you can buy it and have like quote unquote an instant collection of all these staple cards and whatnot.
Sure.
If you were a brand new player, like you're new to Magic, can you really differentiate Foundations from Jumpstart? Because they're both, it's like Foundations Jumpstart or Foundations. It's like you're kind of giving me like here's set and here's set subset A.
Well, okay. So for anybody who isn't aware, like Jumpstart is basically a secondary, game mode where you take these booster packs that when you crack them open, they have a theme card. And you take those cards, you can crack open another booster pack with another theme and mix them all together and have a playable deck against another Jumpstart deck. So it's a really like social form of Magic because
Hmm.
you're buying these booster packs to play with other people, 1v1. They're very simple in nature. I think it's more designed to get new players in. So I don't know if new players are going to have an issue differentiating, but I think it's a healthy way to learn the game, akin to playing arena. You're
Well,
getting
the
those
nice thing
concepts.
I will say, like on that for concepts for a new player, Jumpstart is a very nice kind of way to get into it because those packs you open, they're usually what 13 card packs, and you have a
No, no,
26
no.
card deck.
And
No,
Jumpstart is 20 card packs.
are they? Okay, so I stand corrected. So it's 20 card packs, but they come with lands and stuff in them.
Yeah.
But they usually have a theme. So usually when you open a Jumpstart pack, let's just say it's like mono white or something. So usually they're a mono color, and the very first card will say life gain or control, or it'll have like a very simplistic, very straightforward theme. And you fan out your cards and go, oh, okay, look, everything here fits that theme. Like they're all angels if angels is my theme, or they're all They all have life link if it's a life gain kind of theme. So it is very nice that you can kind of just open two packs, mesh them together, and go, okay, I'm now playing black white. The black half was like rats, and the white half was life gain. So this isn't a combination I would normally run. Here's the strategy, and it's as cohesive as it's going to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good system for new players. I bought a box of them for a party once, and we cracked them open, and it was fun. It was Jumpstart 2022. It had some fine cards in it, like Ristic Study and stuff that I was looking
Mhm.
for. I didn't find it, so all the extra packs I just sent home with my, with newer players that, I wasn't realistically going to use the packs, but it is a jump start to a collection for somebody who is like, I don't really want to invest money into Magic, but I can buy two booster packs, and you can exchange those cards with other people. You can mesh those themes with other packs that other players own if you're feeling so inclined, and they're relatively easy to sort back out. So it's
And
a good system, but it's very standalone.
and if we want to talk about standalone or like niche hobbies or likes within Magic, if you are the one fan of the thriving land cycle of like thriving moor, thriving bluffs, all that kind of stuff, you're gonna love Jumpstart because they're in every single pack. Every single pack
Yeah.
comes with like thriving moor. And it makes sense. So for those of you guys who are listening who don't know, these are the ones that come in tapped. They come with a color stapled to it. So like, hey, this is gonna have black already, and it says choose a color other than black. And then when it taps, it'll tap for black and whatever color you chose. But there's one for each. There's like five. There's one for each base color. So they become dual lands. They're like enter tap dual lands where the second color's optional. And it makes sense because this way you can mesh them together with whatever other jumpstart pack you get, and you have two pseudo dual lands. But if you go and play a couple games of them, suddenly you'll notice you have a stack of like 6, 7 thriving moors that you'll never play in any other deck.
Yeah, it's not a great card for any other format, because you can definitely find pretty cheap duels that enter untapped, but it's great in a pinch. And obviously it works well for this format where you're going to have two, pretty much guaranteed two different colors, but it can happen that you get two, white packs of cards, and you're like, you might want to swap those for planes. But I don't know
Yeah, I
if
mean
you
they kind of
added
kind
them.
of solely exist in the draft format because you're right. If you go in with a deck you've built and hey, I'm playing in Golgari, then you don't need to have, oh, it's green and then I choose black when it enters. Like, no, I'm just going to have a Golgari land that enters untapped, or I'm going to get one of the temples or something that like scries or gains me a life. Because that's the same thing, just with a slightly added benefit.
Yeah, so it might be worth picking up. It has a lot of really fun legendary creatures, a lot of which are rather expensive right now on the market, but I wouldn't purchase them right now. I would proxy, because these cards are going to be opened a lot, and hopefully those prices come down a little bit. But looking at you, Tycho, the patient, the Ninja Turtle commander. So
Yeah. You know what's crazy? That is the one I saw, and I was like, "This is the coolest one." And then I had two big disappointments with it. Right, one is the price, and the other one is the fact that it doesn't have green in it. And I kind of want green just so I can have the other Ninja Turtle from Kamigawa in it, like the non-legendary one that's like green with ninjutsu.
well, you'll have to hope and pray that they release Foundation's Jumpstart editions, and we start to see a little bit more Ninja
And
Turtle
I get
action
like
here. But
finally get my green, blue, black Ninja Turtle.
Soul Tide Ninja Turtles. Well, wouldn't you need at least red in there for Raphael? Yeah, honestly, you need five colors for if you want to have all the proper Ninja Turtles represented too.
Well, I mean, when TMNT Universes Beyond comes out, which I'm sure is going to be a matter of days,
Mm.
I'll have all five colors, and I'll probably also get like a Master Splinter that's all five colors.
Oh yeah, you just predicted it. Mark those words, folks. When Marrow gets re-released as Master Splinter, Corey said it here first.
It's gonna be Ash Coat or something like that. Yeah. What would be Shredder? That's the real question.
Um,
There's there's a lot of good brats that I could see as Splinter, but Shredder would have to be. Hmm.
Probably a ninja like Eureka, which everybody would groan in excitement for.
I could see Yuriko, but you know what? I could also see like Hirobi, Death's Whale, something like that, where it's like he targets you and you die.
I could see that too.
Like you've received the mark of master or of Mr. Shredder. So foundations. I do like it from what I've seen so far. There are obviously a lot of cards that we've seen for years. I mean, Land of War Elves is in there, and that's all the way back from Alpha.
Right.
I will say from an art standpoint, they did a great job on art treatments, which I will say they typically do. There are a couple sets that weren't necessarily my flavor of art treatments, but as a whole, usually their alternate art treatments are pretty solid. This one here, they did some full art borderless stuff that I think is fantastic. Like, did you see the doubling season with all the cats?
I did. They pulled out a lot of stops on this one. With the mana foiling, which is like a special foil type that has all the mana symbols on it. Um,
Mhm,
but they also straight up made some changes to like the way the cards are printed. I don't know if you've seen the basically the constellation effect given to all enchantment cards going on forward. That used to just be for enchantment creatures. It's now
mhm.
going to be a border specific to the card type. So that'll be kind of interesting, and
I
will make
do
a lot
like
of different printings of older cards look, you know, fresh and modernized or ruined,
yeah,
depending on the way you see it.
yeah, exactly, or ruined. It's sort of like the people that like retro frames, where
Yeah,
they go, "Oh, I finally have a retro frame version of this," and that's usually a big driver on those remastered sets. Is they'll tell you, "Oh, guess what? Now there's a retro frame like Edgar Markov coming out or something like that."
sure. Yeah,
But
there
yeah,
is a
that's
new Edgar Markov too, and it
there
looks a
is.
little bit crazy.
But I mean, you look at that and it's the same thing, right? Like half the people go, "Oh, finally, it's in retro frame." And then the other half of the people are like, "Ugh, I don't like this at all."
It's different aesthetics for different folks, but they, like you said, they do have a couple different alt arts, printings, the several anime style cards, especially in Jumpstart as well. So there's something
Mm,
for everybody, and I like a lot of these borderless alt art cards, like Nine Lives Familiar, which is a pretty cute little cat.
mhm.
It's got some great art on it. So
I do like that. I also like some of these callback kind of cards. So, for example, like they've got the new Arabo. It's like mono white.
for anybody
Kind
who
of,
pronounces it differently, I say Arabo.
yeah, that's what I said, Arabo.
Okay, just needed the listener to hear that one.
Yeah, listen, it's my thick Southern drawl. Yeah, no, but I kind of like that in the same sense that a lot of people like the flip walkers. Where you go, oh, okay, this is kind of like the pseudo origin story of all these planeswalkers, and you see how they got their spark and become a planeswalker. I
Right.
do kind of like that it's like this is original before the imminence kicked in.
Yeah. Everybody loves Eminence.
Hot. The hot take of the year. We're gonna bring imminence back. It's the hottest keyword. 2025, all imminence. Oops, all imminence.
Foundations, get ready to. The standard set is gonna change. It's gonna be an Eminence themed set. They're turning standard into Commander as well.
It's gonna be the next the next power creep is gonna be a commander with imminence, and his imminence ability just says all your spells have storm.
That's gonna be 2020, like, or 2043, like the precon commander. They'll all have eminence. All your spells have storm. Eminence. Each time you cast a spell, your opponent forgets one of their most precious memories. Like, they're gonna have to start.
We're gonna be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The anime. Like, no, you've entered the Shadow Realm, and I'm blasting away your memories, and I'm freezing your grandfather into a VHS. Deal with it. In a way though, hasn't Magic started to already get to Yu-Gi-Oh status with all these anime girls?
Well, I mean, I think Hatsune Miku coming into,
Really
legal,
pushed it.
yeah, that kind of put the pedal to the metal on that whole thing. But it's a new generation of Magic. You can love it or hate it. It's what's happening. So
Mhm. I do have a design-based question for you though. So, kind of looking at not necessarily power creep, but I had this kind of thought, and I want to see, follow me on it and let me know what you think. With this set being standard legal and being standard legal for several years,
sure,
there's certain card designs that are in there that are like, I don't want to say obvious, but they're very base level stuff. Like you look at Llanowar Elves and you go, okay, it's a 1/1 4/1 that taps for 1/1, right? So it's like the quintessential base level mana dork.
yeah,
It has what is it? Not Wrath of God. What's the one that's in there for there's a mono white board wipe that's in there too.
Armageddon.
Armageddon is in there, yeah. Um but there's very basic like, hey, it's 5 mana, destroy all creatures. Like there's the most simple text mana dork, the most simple text board wipes, the most simple text like removal spells all seem to be in this set.
Right.
So with it being standard legal, there's no reason I would say to have like another Llanowar Elves in the next standard set. As long as Foundations is legal because it's already been printed into standard. So do you think that frees up some design space where instead of us seeing more like 1/1 for one mana dorks because they go, hey, we have to have one legal and standard at all times, that free you up, you think, to see more set specific designs? Like let's just say, and this is just me kind of spitballing here, but let's say like for the Ravnica set, if Llanowar Elves had been in play when they did Murders at Karlov Manor, did you think we would have seen more of like, hey, it's a mana dork that produces a clue because you're playing in like the clue set?
Oh well, yeah, I would have loved if it was a clue set, but it would be a detect evidence set or mana
Yeah.
dork, and it would be awful. Oh, and they did make it, and oh, it is awful. So,
Yeah, I
um,
could not get behind the collect evidence thing.
collect. I said detect. That's embarrassing. Watsy, don't
Yeah.
send the Pinkertons to me.
Mm.
Uh,
But
but
you know what I mean is like,
yeah, no,
are we gonna see more set gimmicks, I guess?
I absolutely agree. I think taking kind of those standard specific slots and just dedicating them, it it opens up a lot of free space, or it takes away card design from the set. Like now they might just release less cards that well, we already have the foundation set. It's so big. We don't, we don't
Smaller
have to get
sets.
away with coming up with collect evidence, mana dorks anymore. Or we already have. So I'd like to think that it opens up the design space, but I
Mm.
could see it going either way, honestly. With how
Yeah,
they're kind of trying to
I get what you're
pinch some
saying.
pennies.
Yeah, I got you. So if they have like Llanowar elves out and maybe Elvish Mystic, they go, all right, I don't really need another green mana dork, so we can use. If we're still committed to having 250 cards or whatever number in this set, that 250th slot instead of having another Llanowar Elves duplicate, we're gonna make, whatever, a card that is unrelated.
Yeah, I'm certain that that'll be the case, or they'll just let's just make 249 cards, make it a little easier.
So what you're saying is I'm not gonna get Gas Siphoner in 2025 in Aether Drift, where it's like he enters, tap your vehicles, and your vehicles become exerted, and you get mana off of them.
I think that you're gonna see a lot of stuff with Aether Drift. I'm not saying you're not gonna see anything unique, but and that's honestly, again, mark your calendars, folks. When Aether Drift comes out, if Corey's prediction is correct, and there's a goblin with a piece of PVC pipe siphoning out gas,
Fuel,
that's
yeah,
I will.
because 100% they're gonna have something in there where it's like, oh, these vehicles don't run off of fuel; they run off of like ether or what's
EVs,
the
ether vehicles.
yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Now with that out there. there was 37 commanders. I don't know about you. There's some that kind of stood out to me. There's some that were kind of ho hum. Like every set, there's always a handful. These ones here, I think as a whole, and you listen, check me the second I'm wrong on this, but I think as a whole, there's a lot more that are ho hum between Jumpstart and Foundations than are like, well, this is gonna crack EDH Rec 100 for sure.
Yeah, so I think like especially if you look at Foundations the base set, there
Mhm.
is a couple, fun cards. I think the Coma World Eaters, a little bit a nicer version of Coma that's not as kind of oppressive. But
Mhm.
and there's some interesting design space like the Rakdos Alesha. Those are fun, but the highlights are definitely in Jumpstart for me. A lot of these cards feel like they fill the niche of where there was space to be filled. It's like Gornog, the Red Reaper, who cares about cowards and warriors. That was like
Yeah.
one of my favorite jokes within cards back in the day. And so I'm really happy that they're doing all these callbacks. They've given a space for a beast commander. They've really set the scene for SpongeBob with this like starfish wizard creature and the jellyfish catching girl. Like I don't know. I think it's certainly
I
unique.
So can I say that so the one you're talking about, Plagon, Lord of the Beach, which is the
Yeah.
starfish, I stared at that art for like a good 10 minutes trying to figure out what is going on here. So if you guys haven't seen it, it is a starfish, a one-eyed starfish with like kind of creepy. Right? I'm just gonna throw it out
It's
there,
creepy.
kind of
Yeah,
creepy.
he's got a mustache.
Riding, yeah, riding the back of a sea turtle while wearing like a jellyfish wizard's hat.
Yeah, that's like it looks like a Portuguese man o' war, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but just like surfing the back of a, a sea turtle. And basically, it's not exactly, but it's very similar to like an Arcades like effect, just only in blue white.
Well, yeah, and then he on top of that it has a stapled draw effect that when he enters, you draw cards. Each creature you control with toughness greater to its power. So you do lose a color from Arcades, but it's a starfish wizard. That's a pretty unique take on the big
Mhm.
butts archetype. So I'm
Yeah,
for it.
I'm for it too, but I definitely am looking at these sets. Oh, like I'm looking at the art here, and it is literally like half anime girl and half like goofy. What am I looking at? So you've got anime girls, and then you've got starfish surfing on a sea turtle, and you've got what's got to be the greatest mono green commander around.
Shrufus Sprout Sire.
Yes, yes, I knew you'd know it. Shrufus the Sprout Sire, who is like a six leg. Well, depending on what you consider his hands, what hands versus feet, he's either six legged, two armed, or he's eight legged, no armed. Just sapperling mushroom thing,
Yeah,
but he is also a 1/1 with trample.
well, I really like his flavor text. His laughter and everything else about him was infectious.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things you look at and you're like, this is 10 out of 10 design. This is peak design right here.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I like even if they're not the most powerful, I think it gives a lot of fuel to people building more casual decks that aren't focused on being the most optimized, being like I'm gonna bully everybody at the table as quick as possible. It gives blood token support. There's I'm a bug guy, but I cannot endorse Fumulus the infestation. I feel like that's going to be the next big like hated commander, Turgrid style. So
Well, you know what? When you say like these aren't the most like bullying commanders, you look at the stable of commanders they've got here, and they just kind of fit certain roles. Like Fumulus is okay if I want mono black insects and with some other creature type stapled on like leeches and worms and slugs. But it is sort of like a base. Essentially it's a base beginner set of commanders. Like I don't have the draw engine that's super busted, but I've got some draw support commanders. We don't have like the most busted blood token vampire commander, but there is a blood token commander that also has to do with like discard
I
synergies if
actually
you wanted to
really
make
like
a
her,
madness
Evora.
deck. I like her too, and I like that it's straightforward. Like you look at that commander. So Evora, for those of you guys who haven't seen it yet, it's a 1/1 trampler for 1 in a red. That just says when she enters and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you create a blood token. And then whenever you discard a card, you put a 1/1 counter on Evora. So you can discard stuff through the blood tokens, or you can just make like a random discard madness style deck and kind of pump her up. It's very similar to I think it's Inti, the one that came out in Ixalan last year.
Right.
So simple effect, but it's a simple card to understand. So if you're a new player, it's a cool commander that does what you want it to do. It's a 1/1 with trample, so you kind of look at it at first and go, I don't know, it's going to do a lot, but it tells you how you're going to do it. Like, oh, I want to discard cards. That will add counters and make it bigger, so the trample works better. Oh, am I going to discard cards? Oh, look, it lets me make blood tokens that, as an effect, discard cards. Like it tells a new player how to play it as a commander.
Yeah, and so I think that, like you said earlier, there's nothing there are several things that are like, wow, this is really cool, but for the most
Mhm.
part, these are, I think cards that newer players would be very excited to pull and feel the excitement of, hey, I'm gonna try to build my own deck, and then building the worst deck you've ever seen with brothers Yamazaki in the front of it, but they only got one.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean,
uh
there's definitely stuff on here where I'm like, I saw it and I went, "Oh, that's a cool deck. I would build that deck." Is it the most powerful version of this effect I've ever seen? No, but like, CNET, the little girl with the jellyfish.
right.
So whenever she enters, she like makes a 1/1 jellyfish that flies, and then she has an anthem effect that gives all creatures with flying +1/+1.
Yeah,
Like
the
it's
obvious
simple.
SpongeBob reprint. I'm ready.
Oh, don't you worry. Those cards are going to be flying off the shelves, I'm sure. But yeah, I think there's some interesting tools in here that you can use if you're a new player or you want to get a friend into the game without giving them a commander that's like so overwhelming on the combo side of things that they get just lost.
Yeah, it's gonna dumb it down a little bit, and make this a really approachable time to get into Magic, with easily accessible, easily understandable cards. It might be a little slower and more boring or more a little not that's a bad word for me to say, but a little more familiar with people who've been playing for a long time, but that'll quickly change as more and more sets are released and supplemented with these other jumpstart, or I'm sorry, not jumpstart, but foundation cards that we get to see how they meld together and find more fun combos and invent the next exquisite blood and sanguine bond
Yeah, which by the way, they
is
have
in
made
here.
like
Yeah.
duplicates of. Yeah.
That was
um
the joke.
yeah, trust me, I got you. Now, that being said, with every set that comes out, we'd like to do a can't miss commander, like a commander that we think is most likely to be added into our rotation. Now, I don't know about you, Cole, but I don't think we've been that successful on actually getting them into our rotation.
That's fair to say.
I can distinctly tell you, I think of all the ones I've sat there and gone, yeah, this one right here, I can't wait. I'd love to have a build of it, whether that was Harry Gas with Modern Horizons 3, any of the other ones. The
a
issue is the next set comes out and I'm like bombarded with more things and then I never build the deck.
it's easy to dream, and then like life happens and it can be hard to buy a brand new deck. So we should, at the very least, it would be fun if we made deck lists for these decks that we talked so much about, because you can always play them online, or at the very least keep them for a rainy day in case something happens.
Yep. So what we've done this time, and I think if it's successful, we'll probably try and keep up for future set releases. So we have
What?
gone down the same rabbit hole. We've each selected our own can't miss commander or commander that we're like, hey, this is the one I would want to build the most and put it into my deck rotation. So we have gone ahead and built them. Now, to circumnavigate life's issues, we've built them digitally so we can at least see what we think about it, but we've set a couple stipulations. So, the main stipulation of this is it's a $100 build. So, we wanted to build a deck that was accessible for any of you guys listening, where it's not like, hey, this commander would be great if you had $1,000 shell around it with OG dual lands or anything like crazy. Everything is built on $100, which is not no money, but it is definitely, I think, more attainable for people that play Commander that are used to seeing some of these prices even from sealed product.
And you might find yourself having a lot of these cards already if you've started
Mm.
if you have a small collection. So hopefully these decks are nice, affordable, and fun overall.
Yeah. So, Cole, I think I will defer to you. What did you decide out of Jumpstart or Foundations Jumpstart or whatever we want to look at it? What did you decide was your can't miss commander, and what give us a little insight onto your deck?
So I did pick from Jumpstart, surprise, surprise, but I went with what might be an obvious choice, but it's Rev the Tithe Extractor. She's a 4 mana human rogue. She's a 3/3, and whenever you attack, target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token and then look at the top card of that player's library, exile it face down. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. So that's even if she leaves the battlefield. Um, Rev seems really cool because I'm a sucker for the unique gameplay of taking things from other people, but this does it in a pretty
Hmm.
non-salty way. It's taking it not from their hand, not from their field, not even from their graveyard, so no information is able to, oh, you stole my favorite card, blah blah blah. This does it
Sure.
face down, so it's giving you card advantage, and it creates treasures, so it's giving you the mana to hopefully cast these spells even if they're in other colors. So
Hmm.
I can kind of read this as being a little too strong, because I feel like whenever a deck makes it too easy for you by ramping and drawing new cards, essentially that always just it's a pretty powerful combo. So this card is $32.99. It's $33. It's 1/3 of my budget for this $100 deck, but I do imagine that number to go down pretty quickly. Um, my deck is focused on my little war boys, live, die, live again from Mad Max, but it's
Hmm.
a large package of 19 cards that are majorly 1 mana that are either unblockable or have flying or some combination of the two. And my goal is to slam down a couple of these bad boys on the early turns, 1 and 2. I want to get Rev out on turn 3 at the latest, really, but turn 4 is okay. And then I want to start getting the advantage. She doesn't have to attack to get that advantage, so I want all of my little war boys to be, not have summoning sickness by the time she comes out and hits the field. That way I can start making mana. You can make up to 3, treasures on that first turn that she comes out, and exile 3 cards. You can't play lands from among those cards, but you're bound to get some ramp spells. You're bound to steal somebody's soul ring. And so I have removal. I have win cons in the form of things that are going to deal unblockable damage with Vorpal Sword and kill people. I have Exsanguinate because you might find yourself making a lot of mana. I got the typical Marionette package of Marionette Master. Actually, I took out Marionette Master. It's in the sideboard, but Marionette Apprentice and Mirkwood Bats to try to deal some damage through token creation and token destruction. And then you slam dunk a little Grey Merchant of Asphodel in there because, hey, I'm basic.
Yeah, no, I actually really like the build. I do like the fact too, like you said, you've got some 1 mana power ups like Assassin's Initiate, Battlefly Swarm, stuff like that, where it's 1 mana for a little 1/1, and then you can kind of power them up as needed. So, like Battlefly Swarm is a 1/1 for 1 black with flying, but then you can give it Death Touch on the turn. Or Assassin's Initiate is like it's a 1/1 for 1, and then for 1 mana you can kind of pick and choose what you need between flying, Death Touch, Lifelink.
It's usually going to be flying for the evasion there, but the lifelink
Sure.
is somewhat relevant. And and all of these cards are 35 cents. So,
Hmm.
this is it's an $8 package for 19 creatures that are going to generate you advantage when they deal combat damage to your opponents and get you the stronger creatures. You're not necessarily going to win the game with these 1/1s, but there's some tricks hidden in there. I got Draina, Liberator of Malakir to put some 1/1 counters on them. I have Intimidation to, give all my creatures fear. And
Hmm.
stuff like Necropolis Regent that buffs creatures when they deal damage. So hopefully the fact that they're evasive, it comes into handy, even if the only purpose of it is initially to get triggers off of Rev.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes sense. I also like how you have like Dalek Squadron jumps out to me, which is your menace with Myriad. So
Yeah.
just having that attack automatically drops in a couple copies, so you can get 3 cards off a Rev on 1 turn,
hmm
provided that everything gets an unblocked, which with Menace helps.
Menace helps. So the majority of my stuff has flying, but there's a couple with Shadow. There's obviously a lot of Menace, and then I'm
Mhm,
also abusing kind of the fact that my stuff is so small. With my one of my favorite old school cards, Meekstone. Creatures with power 3 or greater do not untap during their controller's untap steps. So while
mhm.
yes, that does make my Rev affected by the power of the Meekstone. For the most part, this is just going to hinder my opponents and kind of keep me safe while I plink away at life totals with my plinky little creatures.
You know what's funny is, and this is going back to the beginning of the episode, so I actually just had a recent Meekstone adventure myself because I was also building a second deck in addition to the Immadane one.
Okay.
So I was building Arabella, which is the
Oh,
like toy from Dustmore that has to do with creatures being power 2 or less, and I was like, Meekstone, love it. Force all my opponent's stuff down. Everything on my board is 2 or less.
yeah. I used to play it in my first deck that I built. Shirei. She's this caretaker that cares about creatures with power toughness 1
Mhm.
or toughness 1.
Yeah, it's like
Power
a
1. My bad.
recursion loop kind of deck.
Yeah, it recurs every end step. You get any creatures that Shirei saw die as long as they were power 1 or less. So there's some fun tricks you can do there. But Meekstone was absolutely key. So when I saw Rev, my first thought was, oh, let's slam dunk a lot of those little garbage creatures and have some fun. Just get the chance to not so fast. I hit you with your own fireball. Some surprising mono black plays.
Well, and the nice thing about Rev too that I like is that it comes with that text that the card itself is playable as long as it remains exiled. So that even if she gets destroyed, she's back in the command zone, you can't cast it right away, you can still access those cards.
Uh,
So it gives you sort of like that Gonti style effect
yeah,
where
but
those cards are still available to you.
and I do love Gonti, but it's always just kind of felt awkward having to like bounce him or have him kill him and then
Mhm.
come back with like not dead after all style effects. So Rev just kind
Right.
of opens that up, but I also do have a chromatic lantern in here to if you're not making treasures, if Rev dies but you have a pool of cards in exile, chromatic lantern is going to turn your swamps to cash. And then this is also the ultimate deck for Exotic Orchard. It's pretty simple little
Yeah.
card there,
Yeah.
but it has to be mentioned. That's an all star in this.
Yeah, I mean, because you're literally casting things in your opponent's colors, so it's great when you can generate their colors of mana. No, I think this looks like a fun deck. I do agree with you that Rev is sitting at like $32 now. Probably will come down in the next, I would say, a couple weeks once this gets kind of in everyone's hands. I think it's a good enough effect that it'll still sit at a few dollars, like I wouldn't be surprised if this was a $5, $6 card.
Oh, I
I don't
think.
think this is a $33 card.
Well, I just remember when the first Jumpstart came out, like Auntie Blight, she was pretty expensive, but she shot
Mm.
down pretty fast. So keep an eye on this deck list. We're gonna put it in the description. So if you are interested, you can pull it up, add it to yourself, or add it for yourself, make a copy of it, edit it, do whatever you need to do. But over time, I might change it as inevitably I get some more budget space opened up.
Yeah, and with this commander being a third of your deck, I do envision you getting some more budget space if you wanted to add in, maybe like pricier removal pieces or some other mana generation, stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
think I think the room for growth here is exponential because so much of your budget's tied into the one card that we know is going to free up over time.
Like if you wanted to, you could always put like a Revel and Riches in here as an additional win con. So this deck seems like it has a lot of space to grow from basically whatever you have in your collection. It's primarily budget restrictions that have it looking the way it do, but it's I think it's ready to take a spin. I'd love to get a game in with this sometime.
Yeah, I think it's still a good deck, even budget restriction wise. But I've always been a sucker for like the 1/1 Death Toucher kind of stuff because people do not want to block or trade with those.
That's an understatement.
All right, so what I have gone with is I went with Slinza the Spike Stampede for my
Ooh,
commander choice. So this is 4 and a green for a 5/5 beast, and then it's got 3 different chunks of effects. So beast spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Each other beast creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever Slinza or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, you may pay 1 and a hybrid Gruul mana. And when you do, Slinza fights target creature you don't control. So there have been a lot of big mana style commanders before, like your Goreclaws and your Goreclaw and Surek kind of stuff.
yeah.
This is your beast commander. Like everybody that has for years gone, oh, look at all these beasts. Here it is. Reduce their costs, get some extra power on them, and go ham with fighting.
Too many beasts, not enough space. It's like space
So,
bags.
yeah, there we go. So this is the deck where, for me, there was a couple loopholes I looked at with it. So one, most of your beasts are more than 4 power. In general, just by the kind of the creature type they are, just like most dragons are usually pretty high on the power scale.
Sure.
So I actually went ahead and put Slinza and Goreclaw in the deck. Goreclaw itself is not a beast, so it won't get the reduction, but it reduces other creatures with power 4 or greater by 2. So you do have a high chance that you're going to reduce a lot of creatures by 4 generic mana and get yourself down to just the pips. And it also reduces the cost of your commander by 2. Then after that, I went full blown fight spells.
Nice.
So, or I should say, fight strategy. So it already has the ability to fight. You probably don't want to get a lot of fights in on any one given turn, as Slinza currently stands. So I pack this deck with things like Tyvar Stand, Tamio Safekeeping, little 1 mana instance that'll give Slinza Indestructible, and Indestructible will let you just keep on wailing and you don't care how much damage it takes.
Yeah, because when I first saw that card, that's the first thing that stands out is that you may pay 1 and Slinza fights that creature, but it's Slinza fighting the creature. So unless you're
Mhm.
making this bad boy indestructible, he's gonna take some serious damage in these fights.
Yeah, so you're looking at all those spells that'll make it indestructible. I'm also did put in here like Conjuring Closet and a couple odd ways to kind of give it blink, so that way you can blink some of these creatures in to get repeated fights in.
Okay.
Also, if you want to bring in for whatever reason, if you want to bring stuff in for counters, I didn't go too heavily in the counter route, but if you wanted to go that route, you could obviously do like an Ozolith kind of build and just load up Ozolith, doubling season, hardened scales, that kind of stuff. I didn't go that route because I've seen that deck many, many times before. So I just went big beasts, go big beats.
Nice.
Smash, smash, smash.
Big beats are
But
the
no,
best. Get high all the time. The big beast manifesto.
and the interesting part here is this one too also triggers off of other players' cards. So if a creature power 4 or greater enters, it doesn't matter if it's yours or someone else's. It can trigger that fight as long as you have the mana to pay for it. So this
Wow.
is a big dissuader for a lot of big commanders from your opponent because they go, okay, if I've got a power 4 or greater commander, if I were to cast it and I've got 2 open mana, I could pay the 2 mana and have Slinza knock out, like, let's just say a blood artist or some small utility creature that they can't afford to lose.
That is fascinating. I did not realize it was any 4 power or
Mhm.
greater creature.
Yep, it also triggers
It
on itself
a little
too, so
political as
you get
well,
that
because
too.
you could, hey, Corey, we obviously both want that Esper Sentinel dead. If I cast my
Mhm.
commander, can you use your Slinza to Slenzify that dude?
Yeah, so basically gives you a political 2 mana, removal spell to a certain hoops to jump through. It gives you that in Gruul, which is not typically your political, colors.
It's a really great removal engine, as well as a ramp
Mhm.
spell on the on a strong body. A 5/5 isn't bad, and then not to mention the beast boost of the additional 1/1 counter is it's nothing to laugh at, because a lot of beasts have trample, so you're going to see
Yeah,
these powerful
and
creatures
that
coming down even
that is
stronger.
the other thing. A lot of these beasts have trample, so this is the kind of deck it doesn't kinda hit the ground running, so you are kinda hoping to get a lot of your 3 visits and a green land ramp spells early, but once it's out, you're just humming along. You're like, "Alright, big beater comes out, use Slinza to soften their board, and then I've got some big trampler with an extra counter on that I got out, for 2 less mana, and punch him in the face with the hole that I just created."
Out of curiosity, are you doing any sort of Yeva giving your creature spells flash sort of scenario where you could flash in a beast every turn, provided you get the mana? Their price is reduced, so maybe
Mm.
a little bit into that mid game, you're throwing down a couple
I
beasts per
didn't
turn cycle.
I didn't get into the Yeva side of things. So I did get into the Goreclaw and the Slinza side. I also played around with Doric for a little bit. Doric is
Get the
the
owl bear.
D&D owlbear. Two big things on there is one, it's cost restrictive because it came only from a secret lair. Um, and two, it kind of forces you to play in legendary creatures if you want to make it a big focus because the backside has to do with pumping out legendaries.
Eh.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, you would be shocked, but there's not a lot of legendary creature beasts that have great synergy off the two. But
Well,
there you guys have it. So we each stuck to our $100 builds. Both of those decks are going to be down in the links of this description. They're going to be up on the UrCast Mox field when this episode goes live. We'd love for you guys to check them out. Let us know what you think down in the comments. If we did a great build, a bad build, if you've got suggestions of a hidden gem of a card that we missed, throw them all down there. I mean, maybe we see your suggestions and we actually tweak the build live because you have that hidden gem that's in 0.0001% of decks on EDH Rec and no one heard of it, but it's the flawless synergy for Slinza or Rev. So let us know down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
agreed.
But that I think is going to bring us to question of the week, card of the week. Question of the week, Cole.
Let's hear
It's anonymous.
it.
I'll be honest, every episode we talk about how you can leave us question of the week on like YouTube, Spotify, social media, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I have a app that I rarely check where you can actually send me anonymous questions. And most of the questions are pretty, I don't want to say bland, but they're pretty like socially focused. So it'll be things like, if you have a fight with your friend, how do you go about telling them? Like they're not like super focused on magic.
Okay.
It's just like a random app that at one point I was using and then I never ever looked at for months. Well, unfortunately, I looked into it and there's a treasure trove of magic questions that I missed.
Whoa.
So I don't know who this belongs to because again, it's an anonymous app. But I picked one that I think you have a relevant story to. So
Okay.
we're gonna see what you think here. So Cole, the question of the week: have you ever had one of your cards destroyed or damaged by another player? And how did you go about handling that?
Well, yeah, I do
And
have a.
you know the story I'm thinking of.
I do. I've actually found the card the other day, and basically, I I have a buddy that for a Christmas gift got some metal dice for, and they're pretty cool. They heat up in your hand and change color over time. Otherwise, they look like a regular metal dice. And the D4, the consequence of it being metal is that the corners of these dice are just weaponized. They're 90 degrees mathematically, correct. These corners are capable of slicing and dicing people. Like, so a double sleeved card, no problem. So I'm a protective person around my cards. I don't like people vaping on them. I don't like any sort of I
Wait,
keep my
people
cards
people
nice.
directly vape on your card?
I've had to blow away. I've had to use airbending to prevent those dank clouds from
Mhm.
soaking themselves on my dragon shields. Uh, but the moment came when my homie grabs this D4, which, if you're unfamiliar with the D4, is definitely it's like a caltrop. It's a pyramid of pain, very
Really
sharp corners.
the
It's
pointiest of the Ds.
it's a great dice. Throws it in the air, and I'm in slow motion. Watch as it comes down, point first on my secret lair goblin token. That I'm a purveyor of niceties. I like to have my tokens look nice. So this is a foil, really cute
Wait,
goblin
but you
token.
never I didn't realize the story came with it being a secret lair. Is this like the Wizard of Barge goblin secret lair?
Um, let's see.
The one
Um,
that comes with, like, Muxus and some other stuff?
It might have come with Muxus. I got it individually. Let's see. Um, it's a really cute art. He's like on a battlefield. I don't think it's Wizard of Barge. It's
Okay.
Brandy Milne.
Okay.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I didn't realize this came, attached to an even more valuable card.
yeah. Can we link this in the chat as well? I think it's a relevant. It's very cute. It's a goblin wrapped up in a rope, flying through the air, and he's spitting out roses. He has 5 roses coming out of his mouth and 3 more flying around him.
Yeah,
It's a gorgeous goblin.
we'll put the Scryfall down there underneath the Moxfield deck links, we'll add the Scryfall link to this card.
Maybe so while the card was not destroyed per se, it definitely suffered a piercing straight through the both the double sleeve, the dragon shield, and the card itself. And then I don't know if it pierced through the inner sleeve on the way out, but it definitely it hit a couple layers. So if I can find it quick enough,
Did he,
I'll
like
post a
was he,
picture,
like
and we can add that to the
was
description
he, like,
too.
filing this thing to a point before he threw it in the air?
It was an inaugural throw. This thing had a
Sure.
just came out of the leather bag that it came in. So
Mhm. And he was like, "Toss of destiny."
yeah, it was yeah, all in good fun. And at the end of the day, it was an accident. So no big deal. But it was a funny use of the metal dice. That's for sure.
I will say, so I've heard this story for a few years. Ever since you and I started playing Magic, I've heard this story, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until, and this isn't going to be an accurate timeline, but it wasn't until about like 4 or 5 months ago, maybe sometime over the summer. We were at one of our friends' house, and I heard the other half of this story, or I heard the story from the perspective of the tossee of the dice.
Oh, okay.
Um, because we're sitting there playing, and he pulls out the very same dice in question and starts giving us the backstory about, oh, I really like these dice. When I hold them on my palm, they change color based off of heat, stuff like that. and then and you won't believe the one time I had this dice and I like threw it up in the air and here's what happened. And it was in that exact moment that like the keys of the universe opened before me and I just saw all the puzzle pieces coming together.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Oh, you're the guy I've heard about for years."
It's yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't be too upset about it, and it is a token, but it was all in good fun. So
Yeah, and I will say he sounded appropriately mortified.
uh, well, and then also I think it's worth stating I've played with a lot of people who have large fingernails that love to like tap
Oh
their
my god.
card,
Yeah.
peckers. They love to just peck your cards, and ooh, that'll get somebody a punch in the
I
face from this guy. Not
I
really. I would
had
never
one.
use violence, but
I've got one that's like fingernail related that's not it doesn't have to do with magic cards. If we have 2 seconds.
sure.
So, when I was in middle school, I had a friend and I let them borrow my Game Boy Advance, right?
Oh no.
And I get it back, they borrowed for like a week or something. I get it back, and on the right side where the buttons get pressed in, there's like a gouge above all the buttons, like a ravine that has been carved into the landscape that is my molded plastic, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, how the hell did this happen? So I don't say anything. I'm usually a pretty like relaxed, calm person in those scenarios. I didn't really say anything. I was like, okay, I don't know how this happened, but whatever, right? But he didn't mention anything to me.
Yeah.
So a couple like weeks go by, and guys over at my house, we're like, it's after school. We're playing like Smash Brothers on the N64. I'm watching him, and he's got his like Coke thumbnail, and he has a nervous tick that while he's pressing the buttons, that he sticks his nail into the plastic and kind of like grooves it back
Oh
and forth.
no.
And I never let him borrow anything ever again, and I felt better about it. I feel good about that choice. Looking back on it like 20 years later, I feel like I've made the right paths in life.
Yeah, you preserved your Game Boy Color because of that. Yeah, you
Yes.
can only that is uncouth. Destroying other people's belongings, no bueno.
Yeah, out of just like a random nervous tick. But hey, there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. I think the second half of the question, which is how do you handle it? I think you got to just play it by situationally. So in Cole's story slash example, there, it's an honest mistake. It wasn't like, and trust me, like I said, I met the guy who's on the other end of the story, and I wasn't there for this incident, but knowing his personality, it wasn't like he took the D4 and spiked it, down like a football or anything.
And if somebody did do
Something's
that to you and
happened.
actually intentionally hurt your cards, well, you would try to probably get them to pay for it, because that's
Yeah,
destroying somebody
that's what I'm
else's
saying.
possession. But if it's an accident, you gotta. It depends on if I'm playing with my my underground C. I'm not gonna let the dice leave that man's hand. I'm my car. I have got a bubble, a protective bubble, but God forbid something were to happen to it. So you just got to be careful and kind of read the room.
Yeah, I completely agree. So there you have it. So that's question of the week. If you guys want to leave a question of the week, please leave it on like the comments down here or Spotify. If you leave it in the anonymous app that I check once every 6 months, it might get answered. I'll be honest with you, it probably won't get answered, but hey, you do you. Good luck on that front. But that's question of the week. Cole, what do we got for a card of the week?
So for the card of the week, I kind of picked something a little simple. It's a personal favorite of the Foundation set. It's not a legendary creature, but it mimics what I think is a classic, iconic green 3 mana creature, Managorger Hydra. This is the brand new
Love it.
Elemental Hydra. It's for the same price, 2 and a green. Mossborn Hydra. He is trample, and he enters with a 1/1 counter. Otherwise, he's a 0/0. And he has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, double the amount of 1/1 counters on this creature. So I love this guy because I love Managorger Hydra. Just pop him out and let him, become a 17/17 after 3 turns. But this dude does a similar thing, especially in any green deck that's playing like Cultivate or Sky Shroud Claim, anything that's searching lands to the battlefield. That you're going to be able to abuse that landfall trigger pretty well. So I think this is bound to be a fun staple in any sort of green deck that just needs to beat face.
Yeah, I mean, I already get a lot of traction out of Mana Gorger Hydra as is. This one here is Mana Gorger Hydra meets like Bristly Bill, which is fantastic. And you're absolutely right. You get a Sky Shroud Claim, you get any kind of creature in the command zone that lets you play more than one land, like your Azuzas, stuff like that. Like you're living good. Living real good.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a solid card of the week. And I think that also brings us to the end of today's episode. So first off, we want to thank you guys for joining us talking Foundations Jumpstart. Like we said, all those decks we talked about, the 2 decks, they will be in our link down below if you want to check those out. You can also follow us on Moxfield if there's any other decks of ours that you're interested in catching up on. I think gradually, we don't have too much on there right now, but gradually I think we're going to start adding more and more of our personal decks on there. So if you want to see what's in our active rotation at any given time, we'll probably have those start popping up here in the next, I won't say month or 2, but with the holidays kind of rolling around, let's just say sometime in January.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled, TBD. But thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. If you want to follow us, you can follow Cole at loveandmana.mtg. Primarily, he is on Instagram. Have you gone on the Sky yet, Cole? Are you on the Blue Sky platform with the butterflies?
I am not.
He's not there yet, guys. He's not hip and happening. But you can follow Cole at loveandmana.mtg. On Instagram, I'm presuming on Threads as well, because they're basically one and the same at this point. You can follow me at Sleevecard, so that'll be on Blue Sky as well. Or you follow the podcast at UrCastPod or contact.urcast@gmail.com if you want to send us a message directly. And you can use all those things to ask us a question of the week, give us recommendations for card of the week. Anything whatsoever you want to chat about, we're available on all those locations. But thank you for making it to the end of the episode. Have yourselves a magical Friday, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.